In the 3rd year of our marriage, Lucas started seeing a college girl. He brazenly posted their photos on social media with the caption, "Tired of looking at a washed-out wife, need to refresh my eyes." I commented below, "Good taste." A few minutes later, Lucas called me. "It's just a joke with the girl. Do you have to be so sarcastic? You're getting old and can't admit it. Always nitpicking." In the past, I would have interrogated him endlessly, demanding explanations. But not this time. I didn't care anymore, and I wouldn't in the future either. Lucas hadn't even arrived home yet, and I had already finished the dinner I had prepared. When he came back, his brows furrowed tightly. He sneered, "Not young anymore, maybe eat a little less." Before, I would always stubbornly wait for him to eat together, sometimes until 8 or 9 in the evening, sometimes 1 or 2 in the morning, and sometimes he wouldn't come back at all. He always said I was getting old. That's why he needed to find younger girls. But I was only 2 years older than him. Usually, hearing such sarcastic remarks would make me feel ashamed, and I would promise, "I'll take better care of myself." But now I didn't care at all, and I was too lazy to even speak to him. Seeing my silence, Lucas frowned. "Rose, say something. Being with you is so boring." "Ivy is right, I have nothing in common with you, this washed-out woman." The word young used to be enough to ruin my appetite for days, but now I felt nothing. I silently stood up to clear the table. Then out of nowhere, Lucas started throwing bowls on the floor, smashing several of them. He roared, "Are you mute?" Several loud crashes filled the air, and the bowls shattered into pieces. Maybe his movements were too big, but a small box fell out of his pocket. I recognized it. It was the ring box where we kept our wedding rings. He hadn't worn his ring in a long time. As to why he was carrying the ring box, I didn't know, and I didn't care. I calmly asked, "What do you want me to say?" Lucas looked unusually flustered and, for the first time ever, offered an explanation. Ivy was curious, so I let her look at it. "She'll give it back to me in a few days." I nodded expressionlessly. "Sure, you can even give it to her." Lucas's face changed. "It's just a ring box. Do you have to make such a big deal out of it?" Too lazy to deal with him, I turned to get a broom to clean up the mess. "If you want to be so petty, fine. When I get the ring back, I'll give it back to you." "Oh, and here you can have the box too." Lucas was yelling behind me. I turned my head helplessly, wanting to say, "I really don't care." But before I could speak, the ring box that Lucas threw hit me straight in the face. I couldn't speak, covering my eyes because the ring box had hit me directly on the eye, and it hurt badly. Lucas was stunned for a moment. "You're not blind, why didn't you dodge?" Seeing that I looked in bad shape, Lucas calmed down. He asked with concern, "What happened? Are you okay? I didn't expect you to turn around suddenly." My eyes were very sensitive, and the force of his throw was not small. My left eye was worse, but my right eye was no better, and the pain made me unable to open either eye. Before I could speak, he panicked and said, "I'll take you to the hospital." But just as we were about to go out, his phone rang. Without hesitation, Lucas answered it with concern. "Ivy, what's wrong?" Ivy cried on the other end of the line. "Lucas, I just had a nightmare. I'm so scared, boo-hoo." Lucas immediately became anxious and tried to calm her down. "It's okay, it's all a dream. Can you come over now?" After hearing that, I noticed Lucas look at me, and then he seemed to make up his mind and said, "Okay, I'll be right over." I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, he said guiltily, "Rose, wait here for a bit. I'll take you to the hospital when I get back. This box is so small. Your eyes are definitely fine." I took a deep breath and called out to him, "Lucas, are you really going to leave?" He became impatient. "I told you you're not going blind. Are you being jealous with a little girl? Do you even feel embarrassed? I'll be back soon, just wait for me at home." With that, he rushed out the door. Lucas left and never came back. The clock on the wall ticked away, and my eyes hurt more and more. I couldn't wait any longer and called my friend to take me to the hospital. Luckily, it wasn't too serious. After applying some medicine, I felt better. Still, my eye was somewhat swollen. While sitting in the hospital hallway, I received a friend request on WeChat. The note was, "Aunt Rose, this is Ivy." I shook my head and accepted it. She quickly sent several photos. Some were of her and Lucas, and others were of Lucas alone. Whether it was a group photo or a solo picture, Lucas always looked happy. When he was with me, he always had a cold face and barely spoke, let alone smiled. So he was capable of smiling. Just not for me. I clicked on her moments and found that she had posted this not long ago. Oh my God, I had a nightmare, I was so scared. And he rushed over within minutes to comfort me and made me a little cake, saying that eating something sweet would make me feel better and less likely to have nightmares. Hehe, it turns out you can still eat cake, even if it's not your birthday. The pictures showed Lucas wearing an apron, focused on making a cake. Lucas commented below, "Baby, whenever you want to eat cake, I'll make it for you anytime." My heart ached. When Lucas was little, he was very interested in baking, and his parents hired someone to teach him. He was very talented. Before long, his baking skills were good enough to open a cake shop. On my birthday, I begged Lucas to make me a cake. He frowned and said, "Why don't you just buy one at the store?" We had been married for so long, and I hadn't eaten anything he'd made. So of course I wouldn't buy one, and I pouted, "No, I want to eat one you made." Lucas looked disgusted. "Why do you have so many demands? Cakes all taste the same. Why do I have to make one? It's too much trouble for me." And that was that. So, I still haven't had a cake made by Lucas, while Ivy could have it anytime she wanted, something I couldn't even ask for. When I thought about Lucas's indifferent attitude towards me, I felt as if I were trapped in an ice cave, and my bones were freezing. My body began to tremble. Without hesitation, I called my lawyer friend. "I'm getting a divorce." The next morning, I was woken up by Lucas's call. "Rose, stop sleeping, get up now." Considering that we were about to divorce, I suppressed my anger. "What do you want?" Lucas said impatiently. "What do you think? Yesterday I didn't take you to the hospital. Today I'm making it up to you. Come to my office first." I asked impatiently. "What do you want? Just come. Don't ask so much." As soon as he finished speaking, all I heard was the dial tone. I wasn't going to bother, but I thought that going there would be a good opportunity to talk to him about the divorce, so I headed over. When I arrived at his office, he saw that my eye was fine and said in a serious tone, "I told you such a small box can't do anything to you. Look, your eyes are fine now, although they are a little swollen. It's not a big deal, right?" I didn't want to talk to him, so I nodded. Then I sat on the sofa next to him and got ready to discuss the divorce. I habitually grabbed a pillow, but found a lace negligee underneath. If I were the old me, I would have been very upset and would have questioned him relentlessly, demanding an explanation. Now though I felt nothing. Lucas noticed it, looking embarrassed, and rarely offered an explanation. Ivy was resting here last time. She accidentally spilled water on herself, and I bought her something to change into. She might have just left it here. Don't overthink it. His explanation meant nothing to me, but after he finished, I still nodded and said casually, "I didn't overthink it. I came here to." Before I could finish my sentence, he sighed with relief and interrupted me. "I knew it. Since your eye is feeling uncomfortable, I'll take you hiking. More contact with nature will help you recover faster." Without thinking, I refused. I didn't like hiking to begin with, especially not with him. Lucas was unhappy about it. "What do you want? You were upset when I didn't take you to the hospital, and now you're unhappy when I offered to take you out. You are so difficult to please. Are you going through menopause? Your mood is so unstable." After a pause, he added, not giving me a choice, "You have to go." Then he started pulling me along. Seeing his rogue-like behavior, I stopped resisting. He was always like this, not allowing anyone to disobey his will. I sat in the passenger seat and chose to close my eyes for a rest, too lazy to speak with him. After driving for about 2 hours, we reached the mountain Lucas wanted me to climb. Looking at the mountain, I really wanted to turn around and leave. But under his strong demand, I had no choice but to start climbing. After about 2 hours of climbing, I felt like my legs were no longer my own. I asked Lucas to take the cable car down the mountain and then drive me home. My forehead was covered in sweat, my lips were white as a sheet, and my mind was foggy. I was probably having heat stroke. Lucas clicked his tongue. Such a drama queen. "Okay, let's go back first." As soon as he finished, Lucas's phone rang. When he saw the caller ID, he immediately answered it. Ivy said excitedly, Lucas, my parents came to see me. We're going to have some fun as a family. Are you coming? You have to come. The four of us can go for a road trip. It will be so fun. You agree, right? Listening to her, Lucas's lips curled up in a smile. Okay, wait for me at home. I'll be there right away. He hung up and looked at me. Rose, why don't we go together? Ivy is a very sweet girl. I'll introduce you to her. Hearing that, I looked at him as if he was insane and said succinctly, No, I want to go home. I hadn't done any exercises in years, and now I'd been climbing for over 2 hours. I was about to collapse. I was only managing to speak with my last bit of strength. Without a doubt, I'd collapse in the next second. Lucas's face darkened. Rose, are you being ungrateful? I kindly invited you to go. What do you mean by making that face at me? Am I your driver? Am I supposed to drive you home just because you tell me to? I took a deep breath and said as calmly as possible, Can't you see that I'm about to collapse? If you hadn't dragged me to climb this mountain, would I be like this? Lucas's face darkened even more and he exploded. So, taking you to climb this mountain because I didn't want your eyes to be uncomfortable is all my fault now? Rose, don't push your luck. Too lazy to argue with him, I decided to leave on my own, but he grabbed my arm. Lucas gritted his teeth and said, You have to come with me. I shook off his hand. Get lost. But the next second he grabbed my arm again, his grip surprisingly strong. If you don't want to go with me, we're going to stay here today. I stared at him coldly. Good riddance. Let's go get the divorce papers tomorrow. Hearing that, his eyes filled with disbelief. Rose, are you serious? What do you think? Fine, then don't regret it. With that, he pushed me. I was already feeling weak and dizzy from hiking, and we were standing on a hiking path. With his push, I tumbled down several stone steps. I started seeing stars, unable to get up. I called out his name weakly. What are you pretending for, you tough old thing? Lucas sneered, and then I only saw his angry back as he walked away. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Lucas didn't show up once. Every phone call I made was rejected. He thought I was faking being sick and being jealous of Ivy. For these few days, my lawyer friend Sarah took care of me. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have recovered so quickly. When I got back home, Lucas was not there either. As to where he was, it wasn't hard to guess. After all, Ivy's social media was full of photos these last few days, and Lucas was in every picture. Sarah was so angry, she said furiously, That kind of scumbag, if I see him once, I will beat him once. You guys should definitely get divorced. He doesn't deserve you. I nodded and quickly said, Don't be angry, I'm going to divorce him soon anyway. My phone vibrated suddenly and I looked at it. It was a WeChat message from Ivy. It was a photo of Lucas and her parents. They really looked like a family. I pursed my lips and Sarah, who had a very short temper, called immediately when she saw the message. As soon as the call was connected, Sarah shouted, You homewrecker. You're so shameless you even dared to send us pictures. Why don't you just die? Where are your parents? I'm gonna ask them how they raised a daughter like you. Ivy's voice sounded a little wronged. Who are you? Why are you yelling at me? Lucas, what's happening? The person on the other end of the phone quickly became Lucas. He said in a deep voice, Is that Sarah? You'd better be careful with your words. Sarah sneered. I was too busy yelling at her. I forgot to yell at you. Are you even a man? You pushed your wife down the stairs and left her alone on the mountain. And then you went off and had fun with the homewrecker. Do you have a disease or just water for brains? Lucas's voice also contained a trace of anger. She is okay, right? Besides, I asked her to come along with me, and she refused. Okay. She's been lying in the hospital for 3 days, and that's okay. Is she okay only if she's in a crematorium? You asked her to go with you to meet your homewrecker? You are so sick. Hospitalized? Stop making things up, you've gone too far. Just come back and see for yourself. Lucas snorted. Okay, if she's okay, she'll apologize to Ivy. If she's not okay, you guys will get divorced tomorrow. After hanging up, Sarah hadn't calmed down. She was indignant for me, and I felt very warm inside. I comforted her. Okay, don't be mad. I won't have anything to do with him anymore. Sarah looked at me worriedly. I patted her hand to show that I was okay. Soon after, Lucas arrived. He was being casual, not taking it seriously. I came back to see if she was dead or not. You can actually make up a story like going to the hospital? Rose, you're getting more capable every day. When he fixed his eyes on my face, he was stunned. My face was pale and I sat weakly on the sofa and I looked very tired. He was shocked, stammering and unable to form a complete sentence. He thought I was okay, he thought I was faking. It was always what he thought. He'd never listened to what I had to say. But he believed everything Ivy said unconditionally. Sarah came down from upstairs and seeing him, immediately exploded and slapped him hard across the face. Scumbag, why don't you just die? Rose was already feeling uncomfortable on the mountain, and then you pushed her down the stone steps. Her foot is sprained and she couldn't even get up. It's only by pure luck that she's not dead. She's been in the hospital for 3 days, and we haven't seen your shadow. Are you even a man? As she spoke, Sarah grabbed the hospital report from the coffee table and threw it at him. You don't believe it? Then open your eyes and see for yourself. Lucas's hands trembled as he picked up the report. His expression became more and more pained. A strange silence hung in the air, broken only by Lucas's stifled sobs. From the day I met him until now, this was the first time I had seen him cry like this, not even at our wedding. He kept repeating, I'm sorry. If it had been me in the past, I would probably have softened immediately upon seeing him crying and apologizing, and I would have chosen to forgive him without another word. But now I felt nothing. I was even annoyed. Lucas, let's get a divorce. I once thought that these words would never pass between us, and even if they did, they would never be from my mouth. Now, I not only said it, but I also felt a sense of relief. Apparently, when you stop loving someone, you stop caring about anything. Hearing that, Lucas froze, looking at me with disbelief, his voice filled with hurt. Rose, we've been married for 3 years, how can you say those words? Sarah scoffed. Well, you didn't say it, but you found a mistress, didn't you? Isn't that forcing her to say it? Now that she said it, you're acting like the victim. Lucas's face immediately turned ugly and he roared. What nonsense are you talking about? I didn't find a mistress. TSK, no mistress, but there is a little sister Ivy. Lucas had no way to refute that. His face turned red instantly, and he looked at me with guilt and fear. I threw the drafted divorce agreement in front of him and said calmly, Lucas, have you forgotten what you said on the mountain? We're done. If you have any conscience left, sign this divorce agreement, so we can part ways peacefully. After I finished, Lucas picked up the divorce agreement from the floor, but without even glancing at it, he tore it into pieces in a fit of rage. I don't agree. I don't agree. I won't get a divorce. I won't allow a divorce. His eyes were bloodshot as he said, Rose, I'm sorry. I was too impulsive on the mountain. It was just an outburst, don't take it to heart. Let's not get a divorce. I'll make it up to you, okay? Hearing that, Sarah sneered. Don't be such a pushover. Make it up? You'll make her end up in the hospital again. Every word hit a nerve, and Lucas yelled as if he couldn't take it anymore. Shut up. This is between Rose and me. It's none of your business. I said coldly. Lucas, if it weren't for Sarah, I would still be lying in the hospital. What right do you have to say that to her? You are the least qualified person to speak here. When I was at my weakest and needed someone to be with me the most, he was never by my side. Yet, Ivy, one phone call or even one message was enough to make him drop everything. What right did he have to criticize the person who was there for me? Sarah said sternly, Lucas, I'm a lawyer, and if you don't want a divorce, I will use legal means to make sure you get one. Lucas's eyes filled with pain and he whispered to me, Rose, just give me one more chance. I was so angry I didn't mean what I said. Please forgive me. His tone was pleading by the end of the sentence. But I was too lazy to argue with him and said concisely, I'll prepare another divorce agreement for you. Remember to sign it. If you don't agree, I'll file for divorce. With that, Sarah helped me leave this place. This so-called home made me feel utterly disgusted. He had already brought Ivy home when they had just started seeing each other. I was shopping when I heard their voices when I arrived home. Lucas, will Sister Rose be upset if I just come over to your place like this? Lucas laughed dismissively. Will she dare? This is a house that I bought. What does it have to do with her? Don't worry, when she comes back I'll ask her to cook for you. Her cooking is pretty good, you know. Ivy said coquettishly. You're so mean. Will Sister Rose beat me when she sees me? I'm here, what do you have to be afraid of? She wouldn't dare to do anything to you, don't worry, Lucas said with a smirk. Ivy said excitedly. Really, she has such a good temper. Then she must be very beautiful. You've already seen the pictures. Pictures and real people are different. Maybe she doesn't photograph well, and that's why the pictures aren't very good. Lucas said casually. She's just the same. Hearing that, Ivy said with a shocked and exaggerated tone. No way. Lucas, how can you kiss such an old and ugly face? Lucas was silent for a while before he finally spoke. That's why I came to find you. It wasn't until all the things I was holding fell to the ground that I realized how much my hands were shaking. Something cold was sliding down my face. Even though it was the hot summer, I was freezing to the bone. I entered the house, and upon seeing all the things I was holding, Lucas frowned. What did you buy again? I didn't say anything. I put the things on the table, and Ivy immediately opened them excitedly. Oh, they're all skincare products. Sister Rose really needs to take care of herself. Unlike me, I just need to use a face mask, but it's a waste to give these to her. Lucas said indulgently. Take them if you like them. I was a little dazed and said slowly. I bought them. Lucas's expression became impatient. So what if you bought them? Aren't you spending my money? All right, go and cook something quickly. Ivy and I are starving. Okay. My mind was blank, and I responded instinctively, and then I went to the kitchen like a zombie. It was not until I had smashed several bowls that I finally woke up from my daze. Just now, Lucas had said that Ivy was starving and took her out to eat first. I slowly squatted down, feeling dazed, and then I saw little drops of water falling to the ground. I had been lying to myself all along. I should have woken up a long time ago, shouldn't I? Before leaving, Lucas still refused to give up, blocking the door and not letting us leave. He said viciously, Rose, you're not allowed to leave. Sarah rolled her eyes, speechless. You're just making it easier for the divorce to happen. I said expressionlessly, if you don't get out of the way, I'm calling the police. With that, he unwillingly moved his feet but emphasized, I won't agree to a divorce. Sarah and I ignored him and left. My parents were out of town and they were old. I didn't plan to tell them about my situation for the time being. I couldn't find an apartment right away, so I stayed at Sarah's place. But after that, Lucas came to harass me every day, changing his number countless times. I couldn't block them all. But as soon as I mentioned the divorce, he would disappear. One day, I ran into him when I was taking a walk in the complex. Lucas was noticeably thinner and haggard. He had a beard, and his hair looked like it hadn't been taken care of in a long time. He didn't look like the President Lucas he used to be. He pursed his lips and looked at me nervously. Rose, haven't you forgiven me yet? I was laughed at this. Now, did he think I was just throwing a tantrum? Lucas, are you not listening to me? I want a divorce, I'm not playing around. I gave you the divorce agreement. When are you going to sign it? Lucas shook his head desperately. I won't sign it. I don't agree to the divorce, Rose. Why can't you give me another chance? I looked at him amused. Ivy, have you forgotten her? How did you treat me for her sake? Did you forget what you said? You said I was old and ugly. What right do you have to ask for my forgiveness now? To shamelessly ask me to give you another chance? Do you have any shame? Hearing that, Lucas's face turned pale and he explained anxiously. Rose, I was just saying things. You're not old or ugly, it was just anger. Nothing happened between Ivy and me. We are just ordinary friends. Rose, I don't care about anything, I just want you. Please forgive me, let's start over. I shook my head and said calmly, ordinary friends? You let your ordinary friend play with our wedding rings because she was interested. You left me with an eye injury. At home, for the sake of an ordinary friend. You left me on a mountain nearly dead. For the sake of an ordinary friend. You tell me, is that ordinary friends? If we were to be just ordinary friends, why would we even get married in the first place? Lucas lowered his head in shame and replied weakly. Rose, there really isn't anything going on between me and her. I was confused before. I have broken things off with her, and I promise you will never see her again. I gave a cold laugh. I don't want to see you again either. If you don't sign the divorce agreement, I will file for divorce. With that, I left without turning my head, ignoring Lucas calling out behind me. But Lucas broke his promise again. I saw Ivy again. Well, what reliability could his words even have? I was out shopping when Ivy rushed in front of me like a madwoman. Her big eyes glared at me, and I had no doubt that she would stab me with a knife in the next second. Ivy looked much more disheveled, not as arrogant as before. She gritted her teeth and said, "Rose, you bitch. If it wasn't for you, why would Lucas break up with me? Why don't you just die?" I was speechless. She and Lucas were definitely a perfect match. Both of them were crazy. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to suppress my anger. But to my surprise, Ivy calmed down after hearing my words, and she said arrogantly, "I don't want anything. Don't be smug. Lucas is just not thinking straight. After all, you've been married for 3 years, and there must be some feelings involved." I didn't care at all. "Oh, so?" Her delicate face twisted slightly, and she said smugly, "So you'll never be able to compare to me. You old woman, washed out wife, ugly freak. No wonder Lucas gets disgusted when he sees you. I advise you not to have any thoughts about him. He doesn't even want you." She was such a lunatic. I had absolutely no thoughts about Lucas anymore. Perhaps I did have one. It was that he was disgusting. It was her Lucas who was now being a nuisance, not me. I couldn't help but slap her and said sarcastically, "I do want to stay away from him, but I can't get rid of him. Can you keep him in check? Also, you need to get the story straight before you go around yelling like this." Ivy covered her face, and I guess she was too shocked to react. She just stared at me with an increasingly ugly expression. I continued, "Tell him to hurry up and agree to a divorce so you don't have to be a homewrecker, and I can be free of him. I'd really appreciate it." She stomped her feet in dissatisfaction, widened her eyes and shouted, "Who are you calling a homewrecker? The one who is not loved is the homewrecker. You are a homewrecker, homewrecker, homewrecker." She was yelling, drawing the attention of many people around us. I said calmly, "Do you want me to show you my marriage certificate?" She was young after all and couldn't handle people staring. Ivy's tears soon started to fall. Her tone was meaningful as she said, "Sister, although you are rich, can you please just leave my husband alone?" I laughed disdainfully. Just as I was about to speak, a person walked up behind Ivy saying in a cold tone, "Who is your husband?" Hearing that familiar voice, Ivy looked back in surprise and complained, "Lucas, you're finally here. Do you know what she said about me?" Lucas's face was gloomy, and he repeated his question from just now. Ivy didn't realize the change in Lucas's attitude and said shyly, "You are. Is that right? But my wife isn't you. Are you mistaken? Go and find your husband." As soon as he finished speaking, Ivy's eyes were filled with disbelief. "Lucas, what do you mean?" "Exactly what I said." Lucas's voice had no warmth at all. Ivy cried, "How can you do this to me?" More and more people were watching, and I didn't want to stay any longer. I didn't want to get involved in their mess. I left as if I was fleeing. Lucas wanted to leave too, but he was pulled back. Ivy asked him with a wronged expression, "What do you mean? You need to explain yourself." Lucas slapped her and said sternly, "If you keep showing up in front of me, I'll make sure you won't be able to stay in school." Since I walked far away, I didn't hear the rest, nor did I care. Because Lucas was reluctant to agree to the divorce, dragging it on and on, I was too lazy to wait and filed for divorce directly. But later he called me, his voice hoarse. "Rose, I agree to a divorce. Don't take it to court. It won't look good for either of us." And so, I went with him to finalize the divorce. After the 30-day cooling-off period, I finally got the divorce certificate. A huge weight had been lifted from my heart. Sarah smiled. "Congratulations, you're reborn." I nodded and replied with a smile, "Yeah, this divorce certificate was much harder to get than the marriage certificate. We decided to celebrate properly for this. That night we had hot pot and chatted. Sarah asked me what I wanted to do in the future. I had considered it these past few days, and I planned to open a flower shop. Lucas was somewhat decent. In addition to splitting the assets in half, he had given me a few $100,000 extra. So I had a very generous budget. Aside from that, I also planned to buy an apartment. The size didn't matter as long as I didn't have to stay at Sarah's place forever. Sarah and I clinked our glasses. She said sincerely, "No matter what you do, I'll support you." Okay. A wave of warmth washed over me and I nodded and smiled. The next day, as soon as I woke up, I saw a message from Lucas on my phone. It was very short. "Come downstairs, let's talk." I had taken him off my blacklist because of the divorce and had forgotten to add him back. I looked at the time he had sent the message. It was at 6 a.m. It was already 12 p.m. He couldn't still be there, could he? So I just pretended that I hadn't seen it. And I went ahead and contacted people about opening the flower shop and buying an apartment. When I went downstairs to throw away the trash at 2 p.m., I saw Lucas smoking at the entrance of the complex. The smell of smoke was so strong. I didn't know how many he had smoked. I was surprised, but then I frowned. When Lucas saw me, he was stunned. He seemed to remember something and immediately put out the cigarette in his hand. That action made me lose myself for a moment. Memories flooded into my mind. I remembered when we first got married, I wanted to have a child. Lucas didn't agree or disagree. I thought he had agreed to it, so I happily started trying to get pregnant. One day, he was in a bad mood because of something at work. He went to bed smelling of smoke. I instructed him, "Honey, you should smoke less in the future in case we have a child. It won't be good for the child." Lucas said impatiently, "We don't have one yet, do we? Besides, have I ever said I wanted a child? If you don't like the smell, I'll sleep in the guest room." Looking at his back, I was stunned for a long time. From then on, I never mentioned smoking less again. "Rose, you're finally willing to see me?" Lucas's voice was hoarse when he spoke. His appearance was also unkempt. If I didn't know it was him, I might have mistaken him for a homeless person who had just climbed out of a trash heap. "What do you want?" Lucas's eyes turned red instantly and he whispered, I miss you." I grabbed my hair in annoyance and said impatiently, "Oh, so what? Can you just stop bothering me? We're divorced, what are you doing being a ghost?" "I just wanted to ask you, have you forgiven me yet?" Lucas's voice was getting smaller and smaller. I pursed my lips and said perfunctorily, "I've forgiven you, okay? You can go now." Lucas pleaded, "No, Rose, let me stay with you for a little longer. Since you're willing to forgive me, can we get remarried? I can't stand the days without you." I blurted out, "Then go die. Don't be an eyesore." I might not have been so mean and harsh usually, but I really couldn't understand. We had just gotten divorced, how could he have the face to talk about getting remarried? Lucas smiled bitterly. "If I die, and it would make you happy, then I would go immediately. Rose, what do I need to do so that you will love me like before?" I said calmly, "It's impossible. It won't be possible no matter what you do. I don't love you anymore. Not even a little bit, so please stay out of my life." Lucas's eyes were filled with pain. He seemed to deliberately avoid my words and continued, "No, Rose, you must still be angry with me. Is it because of Ivy? Don't worry. I don't have anything to do with Ivy. I taught her a lesson and I promise she will absolutely not bother you again. I got the wedding ring back a long time ago. Look, I will cherish it from now on. I won't give it to anyone." I couldn't listen to him anymore and interrupted him. "Stop it, Lucas, stop doing these self-comforting things. When I loved you, you ignored me. Now that we're divorced, you're free. Why are you making yourself look like this for? Are you just being pathetic?" Lucas just kept shaking his head. I love you. I didn't know how to love you before. I was too self-righteous. I understand now." After a pause, as if he had figured something out, "Rose, you must be resenting me, right? I treated you so badly before. I'm sorry. I'll kneel down for you, okay? You want me to kneel for how long? I'll kneel for as long as it takes until you agree to remarry me." With that, he actually knelt down. My brows were already furrowed into a frown. I looked at him like he was a lunatic. "Are you crazy? Get up now. Even if you die, I will never remarry you." Tears rolled down Lucas's face as he muttered, "Rose, I'm sorry, please forgive me." He was hopeless. I was about to call the police when I heard a cry of surprise. "Lucas!" Ivy rushed over anxiously and said with distress, "Lucas, what are you doing? There's no need for this." Lucas didn't even glance at her. He pushed her away harshly and said coldly, "Get lost. Who asked you to show up in front of me? If you can't stay in school, do you want me to make it so that you can't stay in this city either? Ivy first gave a self-deprecating smile, and then her face became ferocious. Lucas, you're so heartless. I was completely sincere to you, and you treated me like this. Why don't you just die? Before she finished speaking, Ivy pulled out a knife from her bag and stabbed it into Lucas's heart without hesitation. Her eyes filled with madness. It's all your fault, you scumbag, otherwise I wouldn't have been kicked out of school. You've ruined my life. Go to hell. She was yelling accusations as she stabbed him. It all happened so suddenly that Lucas had no time to react. He was stabbed a couple of times. When he finally came to his senses, he was already defenseless. I had been so scared that I had run back home and quickly dialed 911. When the sirens approached, my heart finally settled down. Later, I found out that Lucas had spread rumors at Ivy's university about her being a homewrecker, which caused her to be ostracized by everyone, and eventually expelled from school. She had held a grudge, so she took a knife to find Lucas, intending to teach him a lesson. But I didn't expect that when she saw him, she would lose her mind and keep stabbing him. This led to Lucas dying of excessive blood loss. She was arrested for intentional homicide. As for what her final sentence was, I didn't care. It was enough for me to manage my own life well. Eventually, my flower shop opened successfully. I occasionally have drinks with a few friends. My life was peaceful and beautiful.